Back on the mic here for an episode coming out sometime in a couple months. I don't know when exactly yet. But I wanted to get this one in the can because I watched How to Change Your Mind from 2022. It's a 4-episode limited series based on the book by Michael Pollan, who I watched before. Hold on. Michael Pollan. This is stuff. Why didn't I have this ready to go? I don't know. He wrote a book about food. Something about salt or something. Why can't I figure this out? What was the name of this freaking show? He had another show. I don't know. What was the name of the show that he did? Cooked? Oh, Cooked. Yeah, it was just called Cooked. I think I watched most of that episode. Anyway, Michael Pollan is a nonfiction author guy who, is this what I watched? This doesn't seem right. Oh, yeah, no, this is right. Because, it did all the elements. So he was also a 4-episode, probably based on one of his books as well. This came out in 2016. And Fire, Water, Air, and Earth. Very, very interesting. Well done, as was this. He comes at things from like a science-based approach, very matter-of-fact. And I like this quite a bit, this show, How to Change Your Mind, which is about psychedelic drugs, the history, the use, focusing on 4 different ones. Episode 1, LSD, then psilocybin, which is magic mushrooms, MDMA, ecstasy, and then mescaline and peyote was the 4th one. So covering a lot, not all, but a lot of the bases on the in the world of psychedelic drugs. And like I said, interesting stuff from the historical point, and then also to the now, the bridging the gap between the kind of the history, which was promising in almost all cases. The last episode is an outlier only because that is and it's treated in a different way. Peyote, mescaline never had the kind of 50s or even 40s, 50s, 60s moment that the other ones all did, really on some level. In psilocybin, mushrooms, shrooms, is a little bit of a different history than LSD and MDMA, in so much as there's the synthetic even though they're all derivatives of natural occurring substances. And that's really what comes down to. This is a show that has an agenda, but I wouldn't say that that's necessarily a bad thing when I say that. But it certainly does. It's certainly pro psychedelic drug use in the correct surroundings, circumstances, because there's a lot of new tests being done, especially on the first, basically only on the first 3, LSD, mushrooms, and MDMA. And that stuff's really interesting. Now, my one kind of main criticism of this show is that because it does have a certain agenda, I would have loved to have seen a flip side of one of these test studies of either LSD or one of them, where the person being tested, and usually this is the case, is like they have trauma or they have mental health issues, and so there's a lot of science that says either, and there's 2 kind of ways to go about this. There's like the microdosing community, and then there's people who basically believe in like therapeutic, large dose, 10-hour trips under supervision. And they show a lot of video footage from these actual participants in these studies who are doing that large dose trip. And I would have liked to have seen, maybe just as a contrast, the bad trip. Because right, and the odds are there had to have been someone on there. Like, how did they handle that? Was my main question. Was like, if someone was on an LSD trip and they just were flipping the fuck out, which has to have happened, right? I'm assuming. Even though I do think that under the right circumstances, all of these things can be positive. And I think it's probably less so. Like the odds of something like that happening are probably the few and far between. But I'm sure there are outliers. I think it would have been a better scientific study to kind of present it all. But there's it's a television show at the end of the day that again has an agenda, has a reference that they want to get to the viewer. The message that they want to deliver to the viewer is basically like, these are plants and these are things that if controlled properly and we learn about them and educate ourselves about them, then they can be used for good, and they shouldn't be treated like a Schedule 1 drug, which is really what most of these at some point were transitioned to, which treats them just like anything else, And that's a whole other the war on drugs and Nixon and how it related to like the Vietnam War and all this other stuff is all like intricately tied into the history of these psychedelic drugs. And that's unavoidable, and that's just really fascinating part of the show. And my take on it is, I have an interest in them. I don't know if I'm of the mindset where it would help me. This is a personal, just in case you're wondering where I come down on it. I think this all should be legal. Obviously, I mean that's what goes without saying. These are plants, and if controlled properly, I think anyone should be able to use them. They're not really addictive. Is the main. They're not like alcohol or Jesus Christ. I mean, OxyContin or any of the painkillers and the opioid crisis that we're kind of still in the trenches with, which is so sickening to have drugs like that, which synthetic heroin, being able to get over the counter, get prescribed, be prescribed by a doctor, but then stuff like this is considered like the worst of the worst, because and they talk about why that is. These are not profitable drugs. They're not addictive. In many cases, with the tests they were doing on a lot of the LSD, on all three of them, I think there's good reason to believe that you would just need to do it 1 or 2 times to get benefits. So how do you market a drug that you only have to take 1 time? How much does that cost? To mass produce a drug like that, if the pharmaceutical companies, who are evil. I mean, like, I know that I don't need to be one of those guys, but there's no way around that. I mean, these pharmaceutical companies are evil. They're among, if not the very worst of the corporations that rule the world, essentially. There is no worse industry. Maybe some of the fossil fuel industry are close, but I mean, it's a tight race to the bottom, to be honest with you. But I experimented with acid. Hold on. I did have a sip of diet soda. I had like a little hair in my throat, a little frog in my throat. I did acid one time. I had a very bad trip when I was like 20, and I took too much. I was with weird people. I was not. It was just a bad night, and it was just like, I don't think it scarred me for life or anything, but it was just, that's not a drug I ever was like, okay, let me try that again. Mushrooms, and even ecstasy, I will say, I had more positive experiences than not. I probably took mushrooms a dozen times in my youth, not for many years, and I think I took the right amount of those almost every time, and never tripped too hard, and just felt really kind of, and a lot of stuff the show goes into, how you feel more at one with nature. I think that's all real, and it's beneficial, and it's like, it's hippy dippy on some level, but it's, if you can kind of let yourself go into it, that's the whole point of this, is like kind of letting yourself go. Like, what is consciousness? Like, what does existing in the world actually mean? And I think you can get there through and they do mention this a little bit, but even like meditation, if you can kind of, and I that's something I've struggled to work into my routine, and I'd like to. I've always wanted to do it more, because I think you can kind of reach certain like parts of the brain through that. I mean, there's studies that they've mentioned this briefly, but there's studies that do show, like, you can kind of achieve similar things that you can get from a trip on one of these drugs. So I'm that's the one kind of one angle to look at this is like that. Yes, that's interesting from there. And then there's other ones that's talked about, especially in the mushroom one, was the microdosing community, which is you take a little bit of it every day or every other day, and especially what's that supposed to do? I don't know. If you're just like supposed to just be on a little bit of mushrooms, I'm just like, it changes your mood, obviously. And I never did mescaline, what other ones I want to talk about? MDMA. I did ecstasy. I thought I liked it, but I remember having the crash, like the people talk about with that. Oh, I don't know how many times I did that. Like maybe 8 or 9. But I remember a couple times just feeling really depressed like the day after using it, just like totally sucked of all like dopamine and drained, and just feeling really blank. And so really, I think that maybe who knows like what kind of cut MDA or Molly or ecstasy I took. It could have been a shitty drug that had made those effects worse. There's all these things. It's been so many years ago. God knows. But I do think it's a fascinating study, and there seems to be a lot of momentum now behind getting the word out for these drugs. And they end the series, of course, with the mescaline chapter, which has its own very unique history because of how it's tied to Native American religious ceremonies, and it actually has like some religious exemptions in terms of its legality of its use because of that. And there's a lot of people who don't want that mentioned in any of these kind of drug laws or decriminalization because it's already like sanctified or whatever. It's allowed for the indigenous communities to harvest and use, so they don't want it to become a drug because there's only a finite amount, I guess, of these cactuses, the peyote cacti, excuse me, that exist, and they don't want to run out, which is very simply they don't want to share. And why the fuck should they? I mean, think about that. The history it gets into the history of Native Americans and that culture and what we did to them, which is not. If you know anything about that, let me tell you, not good. Don't be tripping on that and trying to consider that stuff, because if you're tripping balls and you think about what we did to the Native Americans, it's really fucked up, man. Is it fucked up? Maybe you should trip balls and think about that. I don't fucking know. I'm not really, I am trying to like get off substance. Like I kind of like it. I like the idea of being straight edge in a weird way now that I'm getting older. I don't even drink like a lot of coffee. Like I'm drinking a soda right now that has caffeine, and that's like a treat, for me. But I don't like use a ton of caffeine every day. I've cut down my alcohol use this year like crazy. So these are all things that like I feel like I'm at my best and really enjoying life the most when I'm substance free. But I do appreciate like hearing these different perspectives. I don't think they're for everybody, but I think that some people can get something out of it, especially if PTSD or if there's some deep trauma that this allows them to reach a part of their brain that maybe opens something up that helps them. And I think that's wonderful. And at the end of the day, they're just fucking plants. So it's weird that they're illegal when again, like these things made in a lab are just thrown, shoved down people's throats essentially on some level. Anyway, there you go. This is How to Change Your Mind. It's on Netflix, so you can watch it. It's on your local Netflix. Thanks.